Hello and welcome to the Morrison Run, the podcast where we read and review everything written by Grant Morrison. I am Angwin,
And I'm Leon.
and today we are reviewing issues 28 to 34 of Doom Patrol.
I believe it's just 30 to 34. I
Oh,
think we read up to 29 last time.
you might be right, you know. Let me check this. Yeah, you're right. It's 30 to 34. Now, okay. Um, which to be to be honest, I thought was a really good spread. I thought the first story was quite explicitly like the best story for me. And then the
I
last
agree.
story was the second best. And then the middle one was like pretty good. But it like
Yeah,
it was like it was like well the issue 30 was the last arc ending. Issue 31 was the next arc beginning, like a mini story arc. And then uh so 31 to 34 33 was that like little arc, and then 34 was another
yeah.
quite separate maybe the beginning to the next arc to
Well,
jump in. Oh
the
wait.
the first story here is like an epilogue, I
Yeah.
would say, to the last arc
Hmm.
that we did last episode. But yeah, to jump in, as you said, do you
Yeah,
want to get into that?
like I'll start by talking about, I'll preface with how this made me feel. So very rarely does um art or whatever make me feel fear, like actual sort of dread, which is maybe a bit of me, also a bit of the way that I consume stories, where especially with things like movies, um yeah, and series and stuff, I sort of go in between immersion, but then viewing it as a piece, a created piece, right? Which is maybe a
Yeah, I
result
get what you mean.
of like school, where you're just trying to read something and
Yeah,
they're like, but what are they trying to do here? Which is good, and which I think is a good thing. But it does mean that when I'm watching a movie, what it's meant now is that for me, aesthetics mean a lot more than things like plot and plot structure. They just sort of
sure.
get me a bit more. But what I will say is this story actually did like make me feel fear, which is maybe because it's a different medium to what I'm used to, but uh, but I just thought it was very, very affecting. So
Yeah,
basically,
no, the end of this issue, it's pretty scary. Pretty
yeah,
scary. Pretty. I wrote down in my notes like
fear.
uh, certain. I wrote down my notes. Daddy is terrifying. Uh,
But it's true. Like that word
the
becomes like very, very scary by the end of this
it
issue.
does.
Um,
Um, and before that ending, that kind of is slightly more explicit, but still not quite about Jane's trauma, which so much of this issue is about.
mhm,
It's about her head. So of course it's about her trauma. Like it's a
mhm,
we're literally exploring her mind and all her alters throughout it. Um, but there's so much that's unsaid that is so powerful. Um, there's a bit where they're they traverse her mind through this subway, and the driver is like one of her alters who drives around and
mhm,
um, guides Cliff around. And there's a bit where they're going through one part and they can hear a sound of her trauma, and the driver just tells Cliff, "Don't look." And you can just he can hear the sound, but we can't hear the sound. Obviously,
mhm, mhm,
there's no indication to what the sound is, but it really distresses him, and the fact that it's up to interpretation just makes it like so much more powerful, I think.
mhm. I I really thought that bit was going to be revealed at some point in the issue, but not having it revealed, especially by the end of the issue, just makes it like just so gross, to be honest. Like there are definitely better
Yeah,
words, but that's just sort of the one that's coming to mind. Just the only things I'm hearing are just just like the most deplorable sort of, you know,
yeah, yeah.
sounds. But yeah, I really like the way that they sort of go about it. Doing a sort of subway thing to me, one I thought was very fun. Like Grant Morrison does a lot of like Britishisms in their comics. So having a sort of like underground was one of those, and then we can get into this later, where one of the main characters they introduce in the next arc is very British. But yeah, having it underground was, I think, really interesting. I think I really liked seeing all the depictions of the characters. I thought one that was a great opportunity to just a fun character design opportunity, but it also helped humanize the alters because up until this point we know some names and we get a sort of understanding for what they're about, like Lady Arnis and Hammerhead, etc. But like without seeing them and their character designs, it's harder to humanize them. And then just seeing all of them spread out in this sort of like fun splash, I thought was great. And I was like, oh no, it's fun to see what they look like.
Yeah, seeing them on a splash page kind of looks like in a modern comic, I would have assumed this was like a multiverse
Mm,
uh issue. Obviously, it's not. It's it's doing something a lot less uh kind of played out than that. But
it's a
I
bit like
mean,
yeah.
at this time, multiverse stories weren't played out. But
Hmm.
um, you know, yeah, it is really cool to see all these different alters, and um, obviously, all of them are meant to experience reflect something that in hidden in Jane's mind, or something she's experienced, and so all of them just implying certain little things about what she might have experienced or
Mm.
what she might be thinking about in order to create a personality based on uh is just really interesting, because like you can't, none of it's definitive, you can only assume and just see what might be implied, but it's it's a lot to think about, it's a lot to chew on, this issue actually.
Mm. No, yeah, I 100%. I loved. I feel like now that I've seen the character design, I feel like we may have seen Lady Honest before, but
Yes.
again, I just think that it's just a very striking design, especially in comparison to a lot of the other designs. There's Baby Doll. I think something that I find really cute is that in the next story, in the next issue right after this, Baby Doll gets, sort of not reintroduced, but Baby Doll gets involved in the story a bit. Um, I thought, but especially with Lady Arnis, where she just sort of looks like an older, scarier version of Jane. It feels like, I don't know. It just it feels almost like a scary witch mother character almost, if you know what I'm saying. Especially
Yeah.
with the way that she saw, especially because in my head she doesn't look like a traditional protector, but she very much is within the context of the story.
Yeah.
I think that that's pretty sick.
The a couple details, I'm just looking at these pages around Anis's appearance. um there's a part where we see presumably Jane as a kid. I mean, that's what's implied. We also find out that wasn't her name
Yeah.
originally. She was born, I believe, Kay.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, but when we see her as a kid, it's like she's drawn in pencil,
Mhm.
um, and it would have been cool, and this very much could have been an issue where like all the different alters were drawn in different art styles, but that's not the case. It's literally just this one image that's drawn in pencil,
Mhm.
which again, it's like there's so much unsaid there, but it's so powerful.
Yeah. It's also
Um,
just the coloring is like
yeah,
it's like not ultra real, but it's just sort of like the grossest colors, like David Fincher
yeah,
colors. It's just green and then like
sure, sure.
black. Yeah, the pencil drawings.
I also the you mentioned Baby Doll's appearance in the next issue. I'll talk about it now because it, I don't think it matters as much to the story of that next issue.
No, no, no.
Um, but you talk about it as cute, and it is kind of cute that there's like this childlike personality, but it is also like, I think that moment where the Baby Doll personality sort of takes over and is obsessing over Cliff in this very like childlike way.
Mm,
It's cute, but it's also really scary. The idea that you could just like lose control of your
mm,
adult mind, like and your body uh succumbs to like a personality that's like nothing like you and is also a child and doesn't have um uh like a child who can't consent or you know what I mean? It's
yeah.
like that's pretty terrifying as well. So I
Mm,
think like just generally I obviously can't speak to how accurate this depiction is, but of, you know, DID, but it really resonates emotionally.
mm. Yeah, I mean, my reading was a bit different. Where in this next issue, what basically happens is after Cliff, not Cliff doesn't save Jane. Oh, he does, but it's not like he goes in and he fights monsters. He just sort of goes in and gives her a hug. You know what I mean? And then like sacrifices himself, and then Jane ends up fighting, which happens a lot, to be fair. Or has happened a lot throughout Doom Patrol. But what happens is after this whole story arc concludes in the next issue, Baby Doll is like very excited and very thankful towards Cliff and just gives him a big hug. And then Jane's very embarrassed, right? And I think for me, what it was is that um, oftentimes when we appreciate people, we we have a desire to express it in a very childlike way, and just express that sort of glee and happiness in a less restrained way. But obviously, as adults, you know, yeah, there are certain social codes and stuff that you know, that we uphold that children might not. And I thought that it was maybe more of like a unfiltered gratitude. And that was my reading. But I do hear what you're saying, which
So
is
yeah, no,
probably why Jane is like so embarrassed.
yeah, no, I can hear that as well, though,
Yeah,
for
and
sure.
it's but like so I guess to get down into the meat of this story, and I'm happy we spent so much time on it because this is definitely the one that I think warrants the most. Because the arc after this, whilst it introduced some fun stuff, it does have some of the classic Doom Patrol story beats, even though a newer character is introduced. But in this story, what basically happens is as Cliff goes through Jane's mind, Cliff, like his brain gets taken out of his robot body, and he gets Erebus sort of guides him through some of Jane's mind, and then he has to go through this journey on his own, right? What happens is Cliff sort of learns about Jane's trauma and meets all the people who've had to help Jane through this trauma, which I think is very fun. I think that the themes of suicide are quite explicit in this issue, where it's like um, the two options are either, you know, attempting to overcome this particular uh, spell of mental health issues or to end it, right? And Cliff is, as Jane's friend, Cliff is like, I don't think you should do this, but there are alters that are like this is what we want, right? Which we would say are the destructive parts of our brain manifest in a separate personality, right? And what happens is as Cliff is going through Jane's mind, we learn about what happened to Jane or Kay at the time to to develop DID and to split off. And though it's not explicit, it's clear that Jane had multiple experiences of abuse, both physically, sexually, and emotionally, from their father growing up as a
Yeah.
child, right? And I think that Grant Morrison chooses to use the imagery. I imagine it's Grant Morrison or the artist chooses to use the imagery of a jigsaw, an unfinished jigsaw, where Kay as a child just wants to finish a puzzle, and the only people I've ever met that love jigsaws are children and old people, which are actually like which is interesting, but so that sort of this imagery of childlike innocence, and she just wants to finish her jigsaw because she's a child, and she can't really comprehend the severity of the situation, and her dad obviously takes advantage of her, and it's horrifying just because like it's like very isolating. There's no other characters in this story. We don't know if there is a mother or any other family or friends. All we see is this sort of brutal relationship.
I just noticed I'm on the last page. I'm looking at the last page right now, and she's wearing her normal outfit. She's got like a black leather trench coat and black boots, but she's wearing jigsaw pattern tights. Uh, and I don't think she's always had those. I could be wrong.
Mm,
Um, or at least we've never seen them close enough to notice that pattern. But I think that's, you know, a just an interesting detail. I think something about how she's, always carrying that with her.
mm,
Um, her mind and her personality is a bit of a jigsaw. So it's obviously always
mm.
representative of her, and I think it's cool to put that as part of the design as well.
Well, that sort of fragmented jigsaw imagery.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, yeah, I think that's powerful imagery. I think for me, what really, like the depiction of, in the pencil, her father is like a scarier than normal, but relatively, realistic looking character. And then in her mind, he is this sort of, grotesque like mud monster almost.
Yeah.
There's this
Yeah.
panel, right, where Jane's sort of crying and screaming, and Cliff's attempting to carry her away. And then over this big wall, this like mud monster is like her dad is coming over and saying, "Let's do it, let's do it, let's fall in love." And honestly, it's just like horrifying. It's
It
yeah,
is.
it's awful. It's
It- yeah.
yeah and it's yeah, and it's like so much is left to the imagination. Like it's explicit that there is a level of sexual abuse, but like I had to do extra research to learn that it's not like the way that like Jane's canon backstory isn't just sexual abuse. There's also physical and emotional, right? But um, that because but the way that Grant Morrison chooses to go about that is to just sort of allow the reader to fill in the gaps, which
Yeah.
people have heard this a billion times, but obviously is so much more affecting than making it explicit.
Yeah. Throughout this last stretch, we see Jane, and she's saying a bunch of stuff that are clearly things that her have been said to her.
Mm,
Uh, I mean, it's not all that. Like she's saying her own stuff as well, but stuff like I don't e- I don't even like saying this, but she says like you're a wicked little slut, which is like
mm,
clearly something that someone said to her. But I think that's interesting because earlier when Black Anis interacts with Cliff, she says, "Shut up, Judas, bitch," which feels like something that Jane or Kay was told at some point in
mm.
her life as well. Like that's a really specific phrase or insult that doesn't just come from nowhere. And yeah, that's just another example of like all these little details that imply so much and leave so much to the imagination.
Mm,
Um, yeah,
yeah.
I think this is a great issue. This is probably my favorite issue of the series so far.
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, it's like aside from Cliff's issues with his like with Rebus and Cliff, I guess all of them, with issues with their sense of self and sort of how they feel. Like Cliff's arc about not being able to feel, which we go into a bit more later, but I think that was my favorite, and now this is probably my favorite. It's just I don't know.
Yeah,
It's just like very very affecting, very good. But yeah.
yeah. It comes at the exact right point. Like we've started to love all these characters, and so now it's like okay, this is the time for a delve into one of them. There's mind. Uh,
Mm,
it's doing similarly surreal stuff that we've been seeing in all the other stories, but it's specific to one of the characters that we've now fallen in love with as well,
yeah.
and between a character relationship that we've seen grow over these issues as well. So
Hmm. And
yeah,
going forward, I'm interested to see why an interaction with the Fifth Horseman was what led to this. Yeah, I'm interested to see why that, yeah. But I guess
yeah,
moving on, the arc after this, a lot more traditional Doom Patrol arc, where is it Wanderlei Kipling? Have I said that right? No,
I'm not
Willoughby
sure. Uh,
Kipling,
right.
who's a sort of John Constantine-esque character, but
I was gonna say he feels very, very Constantine
yeah.
to a suspicious degree, I might say. Like, I'm like, did he want to use Constantine and couldn't?
Yeah,
Uh, is
maybe.
was kind of my first thought
Hmm.
uh,
I think
on seeing this guy.
like this character is there is enough here that he's not just a Constantine clone. Well, he's sort of the opposite because the whole point of this character is that he is lazy and incompetent but important, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, and aesthetically, this he's similar, and obviously his job's similar to Constantine, but it sort of ends there, right? This guy,
yeah,
he's meant to be a crucial character in this story. Like the traditional Doom Patrol story, there is this sort of zany, otherworldly force. In this, it's called the Decreator, and there's the cult of the unknown book or something, right? And then you have the main guy who's like super scary and powerful, and then his underlings will have really crazy powers. Like there's the pale ghosts, or there's like and then there's like the embryo something, right? And it's like some guys that like some people like cut you in two, some people to like make you just not exist. But the Doom Patrol are the only sorts of people that can handle these problems. But what makes this story particularly different to especially the arc previous is this Kipling character and how he interacts with the
yeah,
other Doom Patrol characters, where the other Doom Patrol characters have you know deeply characters who are going through constant suffering, but they do what they can to help as many other people as possible. Incredibly altruistic characters, and this Kipling guy, though he has this very important history with him being a member of the Templar Knights, right? Which I don't know is it the
yeah.
actual Templar Knights or it's some order based on like those sorts of
Right.
knights. Um, he in spite of this he just drinks and every single fight he just like lets the Doom Patrol do all the work while he just sort of chats, right? I think he breaks the fourth wall, which I think is obviously a very easy way to get the audience on board with this character, and he sort of narrates as
Yeah.
well. But I thought it was just very fun. Um, whilst I don't like it anywhere near as much as issue before this, and even the story before this with the painting, I found that the whole painting arc a bit more interesting, especially with the introduction of the other DC heroes, showing how they react to such
Right.
a weird problem. This arc, to me, I think the real value is this Kipling character, especially how Rebus talks to him.
Between last episode and what we read today, I am noticing a pattern where like my favorite issues are these sort of like epilogue issues that
Mm,
come after. Um, it's like these bigger arcs have something that's gonna demake the world, and there's little character stuff throughout it, and then we get these issues after that are more specifically about one character and something going on with them. So the Crazy Jane issue was a epilogue to the painting the Eight Paris story, and
mm,
then after this arc, we're gonna get a story that's a bit more specifically about Cliff as well. Um, that happens because this arc sets up Cliff gets a new body,
mm.
um, but it's malfunctioning throughout these issues. Uh, Also, I would say like the way it looks, it's got a kind of tech that is it's like super high tech and it's like sleek and black.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but there's, I don't know, something about that aesthetic and that vibe. Even though it does allow him to feel more, he says stuff like, "I'm never gonna get used to this." Like I feel like we're getting the impression that even though this new body allows him to feel more, it maybe doesn't quite feel like him. Like
Yeah.
he maybe doesn't relate to it as much.
I want to go into this a bit later as well, but it gave me sort of Spider-Man black suit energy.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Where like it makes him so more powerful, but it does take away from his like who he actually is as a character or like the key aspects. Something that I really liked, and obviously this won't happen now, is that there was a a setting or whatever on this new suit where he was able to increase and decrease the amount of pain that he felt. And we'll get into this later, but that obviously that won't happen. But I had this really cool idea for a story if this suit stuck around, wherein, like with the Spider-Man black suit, where Spider-Man becomes reliant on it, my idea was maybe Cliff becomes reliant on having um, setting low during fights, just throughout life, maybe sort of a metaphor for self-medicating, and then in a really crucial moment, maybe to save his friends, either it accidentally gets put on really high, or he has to put it on really high to be able to help his friends.
Yeah, that I think that's a great idea, Anglin.
Thanks.
And I think I mean yeah, I'm kind of just assuming that he's gonna
Go back to your
go
body.
back to
Yeah,
his old one or something similar, just based on
yeah.
what happens. But I think you've picked up on that detail and expanded it. Like I think that detail is there
Hmm.
to imply uh to get us to think about like why that might be bad or
Yeah,
where it could lead
yeah,
in
yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
story like what you were just saying.
100%. It's I think so. But basically, like this body seems really fun and cool, and but in the arc post this arc with the Decreator and Kipling, right? What happens is Monsieur Mala and the Brain, which I two characters I learned about today, but the relationship is actually very very cool. Basically, what happens is who is the leader of the Doom Patrol, actually? This wheelchair guy, the guy that's based on Professor X.
Niles Calder.
Okay. Kyle or Charles?
Niles Calder.
Niles Calder, right? Niles Calder is annoyed because Will Magnus, right? I think is the guy who's made Cliff's new body,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
he's like, oh, his work is so shoddy. I could have made this in a day. In back of my head, I was like, why didn't you then? But whatever. Um, but maybe, and I guess now with the end of this arc, maybe it's because this, more traditional metal body is what's best for Cliff, and Niles knew that, and maybe Cliff didn't know that, which is interesting. But
Hmm.
what happens is apparently Cliff enjoys being a dismembered brain sometimes. He likes to think,
Yeah.
and then he starts having he gets bored and he starts having hallucinations. And I was like, this is me like with a day without YouTube Shorts. And I was like, I was like, yeah, I was, I was like, this is very interesting. And then also the um, what happens is then we kind of what happens is that Niles accidentally makes the body too good, the robot body too good, and it develops consciousness, and then it decides it's going to try and kill um Cliff's brain, and it's rigged itself to self-destruct if anyone tries to enter it, any other brain tries to like tries to enter the body in the sort, and it starts having like Get Out-esque thoughts where it's like,
Hmm.
where do I go when you come in, right? And then the whole issue becomes this very explicit conversation about the mind and body relationship, which is very very interesting topic. I actually, if it weren't for how emotionally affecting the Jane arc would have been, this arc would have been like 100% my favorite that we've read today. One of my
Yeah.
favorites in there, but
Yeah.
it sort of pales in comparison, emotionally. But like, um, Monsieur Mala and the Brain, they're talking about Plato and the forms and the mind, and talks about how Descartes thought that animals had no mind and they were just sort of machines guided by lust and will, no, and like desire. And Monsieur Mala is laughing about this because he's such a he's such a smart animal. It's like obviously this is silly, I have a mind and I'm able to have reason. And then what ends up happening is that Monsieur Mala breaks in. By the end, Monsieur Mala breaks in, tries to put the brain into Cliff's new body, and then the brain is like, "I love you, Monsieur Mala, kiss me." And then, funnily, Monsieur Mala has gum in his mouth, and then they kiss. But then, obviously, because of the issues that the body was having, they all blow up. And it's left up in the
Yeah.
air what happens to Cliff's brain. And it's like, no, because Cliff's brain is like slowly leaking the nutrients or whatever.
Because I'm not sure we've made it clear. Monsieur Malat is an ape that has
Oh yeah,
full human intelligence and is even smarter than that.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
the brain we speak of is a brain in a jar
yeah.
that at the start of the issue, Monsieur Malat is wheeling him around in a pram.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Malat also is wearing a hat that
Like a
was
beret,
given to him by. He said it was
Fidel
given to
Castro.
him by Fidel Castro himself. It was
Mm-hmm.
Che Guevara's favorite. Um, he's like Malat's very much dressed like a revolutionary,
Mm-hmm.
which is quite funny. Um, and then it's sort of like I would say it's there from the start of the issue, but it's explicitly revealed at the end that Malat and the Brain are a gay couple,
Mm-hmm.
which I kind of already knew going into this, even
Mm-hmm.
the first time I read it. But um, it's a funny little reveal. I could be wrong, but these are characters that have existed before this issue, and I reckon that element of it wasn't canon until this issue.
Mm.
Um, I feel like that's Grant Morrison canonizing something that was already kind of implicit in previous
Mm-hmm.
iterations. That just makes sense. That like just considering the time this came out and the time those characters debuted,
Yeah,
I can easily assume the timeline of that.
but yeah, it's like I like how Monsieur Malad talks about how he's fought the Teen Titans and Doom Patrol before, because obviously they don't talk about this explicitly a lot, but it's obviously a big thing that hangs over this Doom Patrol. This is sort of like a rebuilt Doom Patrol, right? Um, Larry is no longer Larry, and Jane's got her own star, etc. Right? So, having a character explicitly talk about how they fought the Doom Patrol before, it sort of reminds the reader of, you know, this fact that this is like a sort of second iteration of Doom Patrol.
I mean, Grant Morrison loves playing with that kind of stuff, like the
Mm,
kind of legacy aspect of everything, like referencing, the history of these comics and
hmm
the fact they were on some kind of new version.
I think the sort of conversation. Well, it's clear that Monsieur Malat and the Brain are sort of a character based in Cartesian dualism, like the whole brain in a vat thing, that sort of matrix idea, is just explicit. It's a famous Cartesian idea. Like, are we just a
Right.
brain in a vat? You know, um, like what relationship does our brain actually, what does our mind actually have to our body, right? I think that's fun. It's fun that Grant Morrison explicitly plays with this sort of stuff because Grant Morrison clearly makes mature stories, right? But just having them be about like just having them be about subject matter that you can't really teach to children, I don't necessarily warrants like that label of mature. But I think that because Grant Morrison explicitly has the reader consider these sorts of questions is what takes Grant Morrison stories above and beyond in that sort of
Yeah.
in that category.
Well, this issue, the first page, um, it has just an image of Cliff's brain in a tube,
Hmm.
and it says the soul of a new machine. That's the title of the story. And then it says, does the body rule the mind, or does the mind rule the body? And then we get the story, and then the final page is Cliff's brain at the end of everything that's happened. So the tube has like the liquid has like decreased. There's gum over the hole that where it was leaking, and the
Hmm.
beret is on top of the tube.
Hmm.
And then it just says, does the body rule the mind, or does the mind rule the body? And then another caption that just says, I don't know. Um, and
Mm.
I feel like that's Grant Morrison going like Grant Morrison maybe like wrote this issue to like try and figure out what they thought about that question, and then just left it going, I still don't know. Like,
Hmm.
because that's not those captions are sort of, I guess, non-diegetic, like that. There's
Yeah,
nothing to say that those are
Cliff's
from the
thoughts.
character in the story.
Yeah,
Yeah, that is the writer speaking to us in those captions.
yeah,
So it's exactly what you're saying. It's an explicit kind of
discussion.
telling of those philosophical discussions. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that this string of like Doom Patrol issues really shows what Doom Patrol's about. Like um I the timeline this came out in these issues came out in 1990, around the year 1990, right? And
Around it. Yeah.
I'm wondering how far into Animal Man Grant Morrison was, because like it really feel like I wouldn't be surprised if this is where, like, Animal Man goes from being a more traditional comic and then it really hits its stride, right? Because this
Yeah.
is Grant Morrison doing Grant Morrison stuff. Like, this is Doom Patrol doing Doom Patrol stuff, right? Um, yeah, honestly, it's just like a very, very unique story and unique series.
Animal Man might have been done by this point because if you remember, Animal Man is only like 26 issues,
Yeah,
um, whereas we're already talking about issue 34 of this.
yeah.
So it might have been already done by this point.
Mhm.
But they are. That is definitely like. I feel like when people, I feel like when a lot of people talk about Grant Morrison as as a
Yeah, no, it finished.
in this kind of yeah,
It finished in 1990. So
right.
yeah,
I feel like when a lot of people talk about like Grant Morrison as this kind of icon, they're very much talking about this late 80s to 90s era
mm,
of like Arkham Asylum, Animal Man, Doom Patrol, and then like the Invisibles.
mm. But I think yeah, well, it's interesting that um that Grant Morrison was sort of not at their peak, but in the way that they're viewed, they were the way they're viewed is at this time in the late 80s and early
Yeah.
90s, because like we started this podcast on All Star Superman, which came out in like the mid 2000s, right? And the what All Star Superman does is so similar to, like, the themes are very similar to Animal Man and Doom Patrol, but it's in such a different way. Like, it's still an like existential issue that the characters are having, or the character and also Superman is having, um but it's still resonating with audiences, which I think is just a testament to the fact that these are things that readers are still thinking about and have been thinking about for a long time.
No, that's for sure. I was kind of when I said like it's Grant Morrison's like most iconic period, I was already second guessing myself because then I'm also like, but then in the 2000s they did All Star Superman and then their Batman run and New
Yeah.
X-Men, and it's like I think there's a maybe it's just a different group of people that sees that as the Grant Morrison
Mm.
that's more iconic as well. Um, but I all of this is just a testament to like how much Grant has like not necessarily stayed consistent because I think they've changed certain things about how they write over the years, but like they have consistently been uh putting out hits,
Yeah.
uh putting out bangers throughout their whole career.
Hmm. Yeah. Again, good job, Grant. You sniped us. Sniper spree.
Sniper Spree. I just wanted to like say a couple details that I kind of forgot to mention
Hmm.
from throughout these issues. First of all, in this last issue, there's a bit where the brains are like, I can't wait to see the look on their faces when they see me in my new body. First the Doom Patrol, then the Titans, so like naming like superhero foes they've had, and then he says, then the Salvation Army, no
Hmm.
mercy. That's another thing where like we don't know why he's saying that about the Salvation Army. First of all, it's just kind of funny that he's dissing a charity. I reckon he's probably dissing them because they're homophobic.
Oh, I
Uh,
see.
I I think that's probably what that is. If not, it's just really funny that he'd diss a charity, um, uh, along with all these
Hmm.
superhero teams. Then I just sort of forgot to mention the arc before this is set in Barcelona, and
Yes.
we get a lot of Barcelona landmarks. And I've been to Barcelona, so that was just like cool to see.
Hmm.
I feel like uh, comics aren't often uh, representing places I've been to, except for London.
Hmm.
Uh, and
Blackpool.
so it's and Blackpool, true, but it's nice to see Barcelona
I agree. That was fun. It was also nice to see a place that isn't like New York. You know what I'm saying?
for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
it
it like Grant Morrison's really jumping around, major European cities with Doom Patrol. At Paris, now we've got Barcelona. I don't know where we could go
yeah,
next. We go to Milan. Milan could be like a proper Grant Morrison
true.
location. Venice. Oh man,
Yeah,
it could be anything. We haven't done this in a while, but
anything.
should we give a rating out of 5 for these
Yeah,
issues?
sure.
We'll give it out of um. I'm trying to think what would be a good metric.
How many
Uh,
brains in a jar?
how many brains in a jar? That's perfect. I'm gonna give
Yeah,
it of I've either a 4.5 or a 5, just because some of these stories are just like killer. Um,
I mm, I agree. I'm gonna give it a 5 because this has at least one of my favorite Doom Patrol issues uh so far.
mm,
Like I have faith that Grant Morrison can top that, but that also very well could stay my favorite. So
mhm,
even if only because of that, I'm gonna give
a 5.
this stretch of issues a 5. Yeah.
You mentioned new X-Men, and that's just got me excited for going into that era of Grant Morrison again, which we will
Yeah,
do.
that'll be fun.
Which we will do. So stay tuned, guys. We'll do new X-Men
Stay tuned.
soon. Well, I've been Angwin,
I've been Leon.
and we've been the Morrison Run, and it has been a lovely run of issues in Doom Patrol.
It
Thank you
has
everyone for
been.
listening. Please like, leave a comment, leave us a review. We're always looking for new ways to make our pod extra better for our listeners. So please, it's a real help. Thank you for listening, and good night. Bye.